Let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and then we'll talk about pervasive marketing. I'm the GM of Online Marketing Summit, and that actually is the counterpart to this event in the U.S. We cover every topic within digital marketing, and we talk about it in the context of how digital marketing impacts and influences marketing and business at large. And so this is a topic that's very close to me and what I strive to deliver in the experience over in the States, as well as the content, not only at our events, but as well as online. So I'm very excited to be here and to share this topic with you. So let's talk about what pervasive marketing really is and why it matters. I like to say that this is the jump from transactional marketing, meaning if you roll back 10, 20, 30 years, we had transactional marketing, and I'll actually walk through a couple examples in a little bit. And then we've begun to migrate to offline and online, but they aren't necessarily always working in tandem. And then moving to multi-channel. And multi-channel is not just those two together, it's also the influence and impact of mobile and how that's coming to fruition. I'm going back to one part, but if you see on the bottom, the customer engagement model is something that I think that when we're looking at an enterprise to a small, medium-sized business, we're all trying to better understand who our customers are and how they're interacting with our brands, whether they're in the beginning of their purchase cycle or the end of their purchase cycle. But a customer engagement model has really been a big challenge for a lot of organizations, because what they're trying to understand is, how do I connect all of the dots between the information I have, often referred to as big data, and how am I collecting all this information and putting it together. So when you have an interaction with a person, you're actually demonstrating that you know how they're already interacting with your brand, how they feel about your brand, and then you can put that into motion, and that can help any part of the organization. I think it's really important when we talk about pervasive marketing. It's something that actually is benefiting the entire organization, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides later, but it's talking about how we interact with sales, customer support, product development. So this is something that is actually a cross-organizational initiative and really important. I'm just curious if I could get a quick poll in the audience. How many of you are strictly B2B marketers or in the B2B space? Okay. How many in B2C? How many in both? All right, I got a good healthy mix all across. That's good, because I just want to make sure that I put in the appropriate references. How many of you are effectively managing the customer engagement model? All right, we have someone in the audience. That's fantastic. So, it's something that we're all trying to achieve within the customer engagement realm. But I think it's something that when we're looking at the CMO and the CIO intersection, that's something that comes top of mind, and that's one of the first references they make is customer engagement model, because we're trying to use these digital technologies to create that customer engagement model in an effective way. And it's not just about the outreach, but it's about what we know and how we can use it to inform our strategies. So let's just go through an example real quick of where we're going from transactional to pervasive. When you look at sending out a direct mail piece, you send it out. They may visit the store, they may make a purchase, maybe it gets updated in the CRM system of what they're doing, but that's often not the case. And this is, for a large part of organizations around the world, this is what they're doing, and this is sometimes a nice to have for them. When you fast forward and you go into what's actually driving us into the next step for that, there's three real components in my mind that are driving those. One is this need for emotional and rational marketing. When you look at the marketing strategies that you're putting together, what's happening is this notion of a consumer is permeating not just the B2C but the B2B space, because we as humans want to be acknowledged on an individual level. We're craving the personalization. We're craving that relevancy that matters on a one-to-one level. And so what it's doing is it's really creating an impact on the organizations and how they market, regardless of what you're marketing, because it's requiring them to deliver on both fronts. And the example I like to use is that as a B2B marketer, and I'll put out a company as an example. You take Apple. If you're a consumer and you hear from Apple on a daily level about all of their different products, they're marketing to you as a consumer. these are the same people that you may be trying to reach in a B2B space. So they are already accustomed to a whole different level of marketing, and it makes it really challenging for the rest of us and how we're adapting to that and how we're using that information to inform what we're doing. So the gut check is when you're looking at what you're doing, how can we weave in both the emotional and the rational? Because it's become a standard in how we market and what's going to dynamically change pervasive marketing. Second is mobile. I hear all the time in the industry, everybody's talking about mobile as if it's a separate entity, and I always challenge them and I say mobile is here. We are a mobile society. And so when we look at what we're doing within our marketing, the mobile is one other aspect. What I like to think about from a pervasive marketing element is, I call it the boomerang effect. And the boomerang effect is if you send an email, you may be triggering a multitude of actions that you can't necessarily control, but you can try to define in an audience journey, meaning you're going from an email to maybe you're driving a search online, you might be driving them in store, you might be driving them to interact with on a mobile device that they're saving later for PC interaction. So it's really important developing those marketing strategies to adapt for that boomerang effect, because if a consumer does not know that you are demonstrating that you understand that you're going across channel, you've already lost your chance to influence them, because they may be seeing the same content, the same messaging, the same interaction being populated across a variety of channels. One of the things I think is really important when we look at pervasive marketing is understanding that the digital side of marketing has really taken our need and our requirement to have innovation to a whole new level. If you think about the amount of insights that we get, the amount of business intelligence that we now get from digital marketing, it's pushing the requirements across the spectrum, and this is where this customer engagement model is coming from. And I want to divide this into two different aspects. One is the company research. So what I mean by this is that there's statistics out there that have shown that predominantly, and it's sometimes over 60% of research is done on a company before a person ever reaches out to have a conversation with that company. And that's pretty profound, because when you think about what have you put out there in your realm of just digital marketing, and have you thought about it from cross-channel and what they might know and their perceptions before they even pick up the phone to have a conversation with you? Or perhaps you've done it yourself. You've done this research, you're interacting with the people here, and you're looking at this. And so it's really important when we look at pervasive marketing, what that means. It's not necessarily about this amazing consumer journey per se, but it's also the context of they're informing their purchasing decisions as they're doing this research. So thinking about that and all of the properties that you're putting out there and where these people might be in the purchasing life cycle, because they're going to want dynamic content. They're going to want it differentiated from where they are in the process. So really important. If you look on the other side, we're equally researching these consumers. This is the customer engagement model. And we need to understand who they are, what they like, what do they know about us, how many times do they interact with our brand. And so that in itself is creating the need for innovation across the board. It's internal and external. So I really see this as twofold. It's not always a direct output. So there are a lot of different elements to this slide, and I want to walk through each of them quickly. But the importance, there are a lot of things that we need to factor in to truly have pervasive marketing and better understand who our customers are in order to develop these better experiences for them. So if you start at the top, you have direct mail, traditional media, customer support feedback, sales feedback, in-store brand activation, offline purchases, online purchases, email, mobile, search, social media. And these are just core examples. There's so many more than this. But when you look at this, this is all of the information, an understanding, did they get it? What did they do with this information? Did it drive revenue? How many of you in your organization are now referring to the CMO as a CRO? Chief Revenue Officer? How about Chief Engagement Officer? When you look at some of the larger organizations, they're starting to adapt that, because what's happening is the rest of the organization is saying, you understand more than anybody else in our organization who they are and how they interact with our messaging, what they love and what they hate about what we're doing, not just from a marketing perspective, but the products we put out, the customer support we put out. And so that's really pushing to say, well, then ultimately you have a large degree of responsibility to drive the revenue and the engagement that they have. So this is very complex, but I think it's important to think about. These are all the things to factor in when looking at a strategy. And I'll take a campaign, for example. How many of you sit down with sales, customer support, operations in your organization, and you outline their objectives and say, this is what's important to that part of the organization from this marketing output? Anyone? This is really complicated, but at the end of the day, it's just like if you went somewhere and you said, all right, I'm going to tell people about my company, and you never interact with the sales team to say, what do you need in order to make this a true lead? What do you need in order for this to convert? Same thing with product development. What do you need in order to inform what you're going to do with your product development? So a lot of important elements to think through here. So I wanted to briefly touch on business and social. There's two aspects of this, and they're broken down into two on purpose, because I think we get in the habit of putting these things together like they're all the same elements. So if you look on the left-hand side, there's social business, and on the right-hand side we have the business of social. And in fact, they're really two very different things. On the left, social business is talking about empowering the organization for greater efficiency and effectiveness. And what I mean by that is the social business this is how they're operating day in and day out, and using this as a way to migrate what they're doing within their business. And it's going to create more effective marketing because they're using that social connectedness to communicate and share the information. And when we look at the business of social, this is our ability to actually execute, listen, and engage with our consumers. So this would be using the social media campaigns. And the reason why I like to talk about these as two different elements, but understanding how they overlap, is that the social business is something that, if you look at how we dissect the insights that we get from social media, they have a lot of influence and power over the business intelligence and how we slice it. But I think what's really important is how much are we empowering our employees to actually execute on that. How many of you train your employees when you're going to execute a campaign on how to interact and deliver on that campaign socially? The statistics are amazing that on average you're seeing a large corporation with hundreds of channels that they're offering, but most of them do not train their employees from a social capability. So I think it's important just to talk about this from a Pervasive, because by and large social media is a thing that's creating a significant amount of pressure on the business intelligence that we're getting from the digital realm. So let's talk about the multi-channel impact, because social is obviously only one aspect. One of the things that we've seen with digital marketing is there's a new requirement for organizations to always be on. Your doors may be closed for business and you've gone away for the weekend, but to them, they have these social media channels, they have these other digital media properties, which has conditioned them to think, well, this business is always on, they're always available. And that's creating some impact as well. When I think about content marketing, and content marketing is a whole nother topic I could talk about for hours. When you think about content marketing and it's always on, what's happening is as they start to cross the channels, they want to see different types of content across this, and when you're not open for business but you've put things out there, that automation necessity is significant. And I don't think automation is something that is exclusive to an enterprise. It's something that is certainly out there if you predefine your audience journey to help support this pervasive marketing strategy. Second is they expect fluid and dynamic audience journeys across channels. How many of you have started on one channel and you go to another channel and you feel like you're interacting with a completely different company? You've jumped off the cliff, and it's amazing because all of a sudden you're loving the experience you're in, this campaign that they've set up, and then you've gone to their website and there's no reference to it at all, and it's pretty jolting, and all of a sudden your perception has changed of this company. So this is an important element of when you're going to roll out these campaigns for marketing, understanding that they are going cross-channel and they expect there to be a correlation and an integration between those counterparts. But I think that's all the more reason why there needs to be integration across the organization when you roll out campaigns. Because if all of your channels aren't supporting that campaign, then there's really a lack of continuity, but also the success of your campaign because it's not being supported across the organization. I think another example of this is how often does the sales organization know the campaigns that are being run? And so if a customer's received an email with a specific campaign and you walk into their office as a salesperson and you have no idea what they're talking about. And so these are just examples of how you can share information within an organization to help create the pervasive marketing. It will also boost your credit within the organization because then they feel that they're a part of the process, and you've also given them additional tools for them to interact and engage with the same people that you're trying to reach. So let's talk about the ability that business intelligence gives us to understand who they are and how you use it to inform your strategy, but secondly, also to demonstrate that you know who they are. There's a very fine line, obviously, in privacy, but I think also what we in America call the creepy factor, especially with retargeting and, wow, how did you know I was just looking at that bag? That seems, you seem to be following me across the web. One of the things that I think is really important when you look at Pervasive is you do want to demonstrate as to who they are, but you also have to respect that it's on their own terms, and so understanding that how much empowerment can you put on your consumer while balancing the needs that you also want to allow them to dictate how they want to interact with you. This goes back to when you're selecting the channels that you're choosing to execute your campaign on. I often, prior to my current role, I had a marketing agency, and I would have a lot of companies who would come to me and they'd say, I have to be on Facebook. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you this. Are your consumers on Facebook? And they're like, yes, that's why we have to be there. And I say, okay, do you think that your consumers want to interact with you there? And they're like, wow, that's a really good question. Being very careful about this. This is a part of this creepy factor that I like to refer to, in that looking at the channels, you can be pervasive, but sometimes pervasive is a little too far, and you're going where people don't want to interact with your brand. So respecting where they want to interact with your brand and how much you share with them. There's an ability within Facebook now where you can actually leverage your own list and see who's not responding perhaps in email to your list, but you're now trying to reach them in a different capacity. And I think that's an example where a lot of consumers have been very impressed that there's another way to reach them, and it's been a great test bed for a lot of organizations. But I think again, it's knowing who's your customer, how do they want to be interacted, and constantly look at the intelligence to make sure that you're using that to inform your strategy. If it doesn't work, reassess it and revisit it. And that's just what I mean about informing your strategy. When we look at the intelligence that comes from digital marketing alone, I think what's really important is understanding how do you use it to inform your strategy, how often, and in what capacity, and then how do you share that with the organization. So let's talk about that from a perspective of how do you have agile strategy and real-time marketing. And what I mean by that is certainly we have strategies that can extend months, years, long-term planning, but I think what's really important is understanding how nimble can you be when you set off on your specific campaigns. And I'm using campaigns as an example today because I think it's the easiest thing for us to all identify. When I was talking about a couple minutes ago was the outputs. The understanding, have you reached out to the other parts of the organization? Understanding what outputs do you need from this campaign in order for it to be effective for every part of the organization. And doing it up front is going to save you a lot of time and effort. Because otherwise, you might get labeled as, that's marketing. They just spend a lot of money. We all don't want that. We want to show how effective we are in driving revenue. Choosing the technology that scales with future needs. This is one of these things, again, I think it goes back to the necessity for pervasive marketing. When you look at the technology that's out there and what we're able to do, there's new technology that comes out every day, and I myself have a hard time keeping pace with it. But I think when you look at the technology investments you're making, make sure that they can scale with your needs. Maybe you're growing, maybe you don't need all the things that it comes with at this point, but trying to identify by reaching out to the other parts of the organization, where do you think you're going to be? And where do you think you could be as you look at those technologies? Next is the checkpoints that are shareable with the entire organization. This is probably one of the best achievements I've seen when you look at cross-organizational pervasive marketing is when you're looking at the data and you're constantly sharing it across the organization, because it's helping inform things like product development and customer support. And that in itself is enabling an organization to create greater impact with their consumers, because they're seeing this information in real time and not something that comes as a year-end report. So I think it's really important as you look at pervasive marketing is this is what's happening, this is what's coming out of what we're doing and why it's important to the organization. Two things that I think are really important when we talk about what we're trying to do is with our consumers, the personalization and creating relevance. I think those are probably the two biggest buzzwords right now in the industry. And I think when you look at personalization, we want to create personalization, but it can't be reinventing the wheel for the organization. So looking at not only what technologies you could adapt, but also where can you create personalization on a one-to-one basis. And what I mean by that is, what can you share with the other parts of the organization, sales is an example, that you know about these consumers to create that personalization as you're interacting with them. And I think that goes a long way. It's not just about sending out an email with a lot of details about a person. It's about enabling the business intelligence within the organization to create that personalization, perhaps on a one-to-one level. Same thing with customer support. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than calling customer support, and they act like you've never even purchased something from their company, and you can't understand, well, I just was in your store, I don't understand how you don't know who I am. And this just becomes the new standard for what we're trying to execute against. The personalization and the relevancy should extend across all channels. And this is really important as well. This is a fine line because there's only so much customization that you can do without creating an extensive amount of iterations on a campaign. But again, channels don't extend just within the digital realm. I think it's really important as you marry those two with offline. And then across the organization, like I said, with the sales. Are there any questions before we wrap? Okay. Well, thank you.